Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Walker. Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. Hello, Maverick family. Was it disrespectful? The Olympic Committee says they meant no disrespect. They're referring, of course, that they're actually not referring to the Last Supper presentation. They don't actually mention it, and I'll tell you why they don't mention it, or at least I'll show you how they don't mention it a little later when we dig into that story. We're also going to explore this new bombshell evidence that is emerging. This is about the Donald Trump attempted assassination. We are now finding out that there was no communication. I repeat, no communication between the local SWAT, the local SWAT team from the local police service and the Secret Service, which of course is a federal policing agency. Hooters. We have some Hooters news for you. Not gonna spoil the ending of that story, so I'm not gonna tell you anything more about it. J.D. Vance rips into Kamala Harris. Power blackout in Paris at the Olympics, or so we are told. And that is the whole thing. It's like, so we are told. Is it real? Well, I don't know what's real anymore. I literally do not know what's real. And we'll talk about how we don't know what's real. And there's also a little bit of backpedaling that I need to do. Not backpedaling. We need to rewind the time clock a day or so, actually a couple of days, to highlight a story that we should have picked up on a couple of days ago, but it sort of slipped through the cracks. But it seems like it is a fairly major development in reconciliation in Canada between the federal government, provincial governments, and First Nations. So we'll tell you about that too. We have a lot of things to tell you about tonight, so stay with me. More to come right here on the Maverick News Channel.
He's a fighter. He's a survivor. President Trump, defiant, strong. He is determined to make America great again. Pay tribute to the 45th President of the United States with this collectible t-shirt from the Maverick News Memorable Moments collection. Even a would-be assassin's bullet could not stop him. Instead, he emerged with his fist in the air ready to fight for freedom. Get your Trump Fighting for Freedom t-shirt with any donation of $30 or more to Maverick News. There are two iconic artistic designs to choose from, but there is only one way to get these. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Support free speech, free media. Support Maverick News. Call 1-866-248-1490 or order online at supergeeks.tv.
All right, we're back, and I'm hoping we get those t-shirts printed up and ready to, we should ship them out, I think, this week, and I hope we get caught up on our shirts within the next week. We have a few people waiting, I know, to receive shirts that they have coming to them. I appreciate your patience. We just ran out of a couple of sizes And yeah, so I think that we have 3 people waiting for some merchandise. So I should get that out, I hope, within the week. And again, my apologies for the delay. Just need to make sure we get you exactly what it is you want. If you are inclined to support the channel, if you like what we do here, you can do that by donating at freedomreporters.com. That URL takes you directly to the PayPal donation page. You can also donate at maverickdonations.com. And if you do donate $30 or more, I can send you one of the new Trump t-shirts. Just tell me which one you want, what size you need. When you send in the donation, just make a notation in the comment section, and I can send you one of those Trump t-shirts. Or we can send you a Maverick News t-shirt for a $30 donation or more. Let's see here. What else do we have going on? Okay. What should our lead story of the night be? I guess we can dig into the Last Supper. I know that is upsetting a lot of people. The Olympic Committee, the International Olympic Committee, has issued a statement on the opening ceremony, and they're saying, oops, sorry about that, but they're not actually making reference directly to the Last Supper performance. Here's the statement. We'll show you what the Last Supper looked like in a moment. I'm sure everyone has probably seen it already anyway, but here's the statement from the IOC. The IOC has taken note of and welcomes the clarification given by the Paris 2024 Organizing Committee regarding the opening ceremony. On the daily press briefing, the Organizing Committee said that there was never any intention to show disrespect towards any religious group or belief. They reiterated that their intention with the opening ceremony was always to celebrate community and tolerance. The Organizing Committee also said that if anyone was offended by certain scenes, this was completely unintentional and they were sorry. So that's not actually, I'm sure that's like a social media post about their statement. And the Last Supper. What did the Last Supper look like? Just in case you missed it, here I'll bring up the broadcast that we had on last night, talking about it. Now I can't let this roll because we got a copyright warning last night, but there's what the Last Supper presentation at the opening for the Olympics looked like. And a lot of people upset about this. They say it's a disrespectful and insult to Christianity. Some are saying that it is satanic. What do you guys think? Any thoughts on whether this is actually disrespectful? I'm just seeing if I can find a key soundbite for you. Here we go. So Donald Trump Jr., he's getting a lot of ink in media over this issue. Here, I'll show you. Not exactly sure why it's going to him. I guess because he's over there on the conservative side, I guess. Donald Trump Jr. fumes over satanic Olympics opening ceremony. Such a shame, he says. This is published in, this is a Huffington Post article. It says Donald Trump Jr. went on a rant over woke ideology as he described a satanic parody of Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper that featured drag queens during the opening ceremony of the Paris Olympics on Friday. The drag-inclusive portrayal of the iconic painting, which depicts Jesus Christ's meal with the apostles before his crucifixion, led to backlash from some Christian bishops and conservative figures, such as House Speaker Mike Johnson, Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker, and Trump Jr., former president's son, who claimed his mother Ivana Trump was an Olympian as part of the Czechoslovakian ski team in the 1972 Winter Olympics, a claim that has been disputed by the Czech Olympic Committee, said he used to be excited about the games when he was a child. Then he writes on social media, he says, now with the ever predictable and seemingly satanic to me drag queen opening ceremonies and never-ending BS, no one I know even thinks about it beyond maybe watching some highlights on social media. Let's see if we can find his actual post. Here we go. Here's his post. Let's bring up Donald Trump Jr. He's making waves online after waves were made by Thomas Jolie, the artistic director for the Olympics, the man behind The Last Supper parody. I guess that would be one way of describing it. Here's Donald Trump's actual post on X. My mom was an Olympian, Czech national ski team. And as a kid, we would be excited for weeks leading up to the games. Now at the ever predictable and seemingly satanic to me drag queen opening ceremonies and never-ending BS, no one I know even thinks about it beyond maybe watching some highlights. It's such a shame that that event that used to create so much national pride now creates at best indifference. Using the games to push woke ideology has zero to do with anything the games stands for. Rather than highlighting the incredible accomplishments of these amazing athletes, corp media subverts all their hard work to push leftist insanity. It's not only a shame, but a true disservice to some of the most talented and dedicated people on earth. Hopefully one day enough people will finally have had enough of the BS. Then you can continue to watch everything good and decent and everything you hold dear get burned to the effing ground. The choice is yours. So that's Donald Trump Jr.'s post on this issue. Now, I did see as well sort of a reaction online. It was a part of an interview, actually, with the, I think it was a blue scrotum man. I don't think they described him that way in the article. Yeah, let me see if I can find it. Olympic supper. Yeah, here we go. So he said, this is the French actor and singer Philippe Catherine. He starred as the Greek god of wine, Dionysus, in this parody of Leonardo da Vinci's depiction of the Last Supper. So what was it that he said? He said he's something of a voyeur. And I thought, well, okay, but is it really appropriate? Is it the right place to indulge your fetish with voyeurism? Should the artistic director feed all of that and bring it front and center and give it a world stage It seems highly inappropriate to me, to be quite honest, and I'm editorializing. That's my opinion. But he said that above all, what was that he said? It's not in this particular version of the article, but he expressed he was happy that they were able to do this kind of thing, and said, and I'm paraphrasing now, but above all, that they were free to do it. And I'm all about freedom. Nevertheless, I do take exception to what they have done here. They say that there is no, that they didn't intend for this to offend anyone or insult anyone. But indeed, that is pretty much what they did. And I think it was intentional, to be quite honest. I think that it was intentional simply because they're using this as a platform to push their agenda forward, their social engineering agenda, where their sexuality is one of the key, if not the key, to defining who and what they are, and thrusting that into the limelight, into the spotlight, forcing other people to take note and accept. Tolerance, I promote tolerance. I believe we all need to be tolerant of each other, but you can take things too far. And I think that that is what has happened here again. As a result, you get pushback. Here's the news conference where they're talking about this. Never meant to disrespect, they said. So they come in, microphones turned on. And this is the way it went down.
To the gender parity subject, one is not, so I think
and clearly there was never an intention to show disrespect to any religious group. On the contrary, I think that Thomas Joly really tried to really intend to celebrate community tolerance. That was his word yesterday, and looking at the result of the polls that we shared, we believe that this ambition was achieved. If people have taken any offense, we are of course really sorry.
Blocking of the videos from the organizers' side. There've been some reports on blocking.
It was a ceremony like no other, and those are games like no other. I think that our hosts, it's easy for me to say, and we should all be grateful and thankful, they have put together a vision for these games, which is unprecedented. It's an incredible vision for a games. We're trying to showcase that in the best possible way.
Justement, de choses peut-être qui n'ont pas été, que vous aviez prévues dans l'équipe, qui n'ont pas été
La partie philosophique, c'est, je voudrais savoir comment vous voyez...
Ma volonté n'est pas d'être subversif, ni de me moquer, ni de choquer. Ma volonté est simplement de dire que...
Okay, enough of that. Brian says I sound like a QAnon subscriber. I don't even know what that means. And Dancy Actel says pervert alert. I don't know. I just think that that kind of display, that kind of performance, it's not, I can accept it at a place like Eurovision, but at the Olympics, it seems like it's just inappropriate. It's political, and that's largely why, because this should be a celebration of sport and competition and sportsmanship. But the Olympics always deteriorate into a political tug of war. It's always being hijacked for political purposes by different people for different causes all the time. And I really wish they would get a lot of the politics out of the Olympics. That being said, I suppose it's inevitable because you have nations competing against nations in the arena. So automatically there's a political element, a cultural element, sometimes even a religious element involved, because you have people literally wearing their flags. They're wrapping their country's flag around themselves. And so it becomes, you know, an international competition. And then people talk about political things, I suppose. But I think that the politics should take a back seat. And the real reason I just take exception to this is because what was on display there was a political message. It was a social engineering message. Go do it. I'm all in favor of people having the right to free speech and expressing themselves any way they want. But there are, you have appropriate venues in which to do different kinds of things. I don't think the Olympics was the place to do this myself. But that is me. That's me. And let's go over to the Rumble chat to see what people are saying over there. And, and clearly a lot of other people have been offended by this. They did find it disrespectful, in particular people who are, serious Christians. Serious Christians. What else do we have? Comments. Stoic teacher says, hi, Lindy, an assessment of the vile Olympic depopulation celebration. David Doyle says, meanwhile, the banned men in swimming. Yeah. Always controversy at the Olympics of one kind or another. Doping, use of steroids, political things. And Kat says, Rick, check who won women's cycling. None of them were women. Is that right? Well, let's do that. Let's check and see who won women's cycling today. So, women's cycling. I don't know. Cycling today, Olympics. If I can't find it quickly, we'll move on. But Paris Olympics, Pauline Ferrand-Prévot takes stunning women's cross-country mountain bike gold for France. France is Pauline Ferrand-Prévot. Of course, I have no idea who these people are. I follow cycling about as much as I follow anything that I don't follow. This person looks like a woman to me. Definitely. So I don't know. I'll have to take your word for it for now. Maverick, the only cultural display at the Olympics should be sports culture and flag representation of the different countries. Yeah, I'm kind of there with you. Because as soon as you start getting into the thick of politics in other ways, it just causes all kinds of other problems. Put all that stuff aside and bring people together. That's what the Olympics, I think, should be about. Bringing people together with the common, for the common cause or the common purpose of just celebrating human achievement, human human achievement in the area of sports. And put everything else aside for a little while. That would be fantastic, in my view. So I agree with you. Canada women's soccer disgrace. I don't know. I thought that they won and kept their medal hopes alive. That's what I saw in the news today. But Donald Trump Jr. is right on this, and in this way, I haven't been watching. I don't have a lot of interest in it. Maybe I should, but I just don't. Are you guys watching the Olympics? I don't know. Oh, the other thing that the blue scrotum man had to say was he made the claim that the Last Supper presentation or performance was supposed to be a tribute of sorts to the first Olympic Games, the first Roman Games, and went on to make another claim in the interview that he did, stating that the first games, the very first games, were actually naturist games. And then I thought, well, I don't know if that's actually true. Is it? I don't know. I'm going to fact check that for you right now. Were the first Olympic Roman Games naturist games? And he was making that comment in relation to his voyeuristic fetish. Well, I guess he's right. So I'm just checking it out. And I'm getting some facts here. The first Olympic Games and Roman Games were not naturist games, but they did involve nudity, particularly in the context of the ancient Greek Olympics. Ancient Greece, the ancient Olympic Games, which began in 776 BCE, featured athletes who competed nude. This practice was known as gymnos, meaning naked in Greek, and was believed to promote equality and focus on the human body's aesthetics and athletic prowess. Nudity was a way to demonstrate physical fitness and honor the gods, particularly Zeus. Events included running, wrestling, boxing, some sort of martial arts event, javelin, long jump, running, and wrestling as part of a pentathlon. The Roman Games, including gladiatorial contests and chariot races, were not naturist. Participants in those games wore specific attire suitable for their roles, such as armor for gladiators and tunics for charioteers. Public nudity was not a feature of Roman Games in the same way it was for Greek athletics. I didn't know that the Greek Games were involved in nudity, but I just learned something new today. The Roman Games were more focused on spectacle, entertainment, and showcasing the power of the empire rather than celebrating athleticism and the human body as in the Greek tradition. And there you see, even back then, the Roman Games focused on showcasing the power of the empire, which is absolutely a political characteristic of the event. While nudity was a characteristic of Greek athletic competitions, it did not define the Roman Games. Neither set of games was explicitly naturist in the modern sense of promoting social nudity as a lifestyle or a philosophy, but you see, that's why I kind of take exception to what they did, because I think that that is what they were doing. They were promoting a lifestyle, promoting a political agenda that rubs a lot of people the wrong way, a huge group of people. And given the sensitive nature of it and the political nature of it, yeah, I think it's not the right place. Not the right place to do it. Not that I don't even think it would be an appropriate thing to sit there and put on some sort of a performance taking a side in one of the hot wars that we're currently witnessing in Ukraine and Gaza, taking a side and putting together a presentation or a performance to open the Olympic ceremonies. I don't think it's the right place. Same reason. What a game. And, you know, Brian, I appreciate your comment. I respect it. And I can take it. I can take the comment. No problem. All right, let me take a little break. We'll come back, and our coverage of the top news stories of the day will continue. So don't go away.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
So Grant Abraham, who has been on this program before, leader of the United Party of Canada, weighed in on the Last Supper issue. He says the 2024 Olympic opening ceremony was a lame and shallow attack on the bedrock values of Western civilization and the Christian faith. Pathetic, he says. So I thought I'd share his post with you. Here it is. I won't read it again. I just did, but I will enlarge the image that he attached to his post, how it started, how it's going, comparing the Last Supper to what the Last Supper painting to the photograph of what happened during the opening ceremonies at the Olympics. And that kind of leads me to a sidebar story related to the opening ceremonies, the Olympics in general. And it's going to lead me into a bit of a commentary here tonight about what is real, what isn't. And you're like, what are you talking about? Well, I'm talking about this story about blackouts in Paris. Here, look at this. So yesterday, during our broadcast, I did take note of reports saying that Paris had been hit by a major blackout, and our internet is freezing up. Sorry about that. Not sure why. Here's an article in the Daily Mail. Paris is hit by a power blackout, claim social media users. Note they say claim. A day after the city was battered by rain and transport system was brought to its knees by protesters. And so I've seen a really big range of reports on this, all the way from, and why is my internet freezing up so much here? I'll tell you what, let me close some things down here. That's probably what I need to do. Otherwise, we're going to get ourselves into a heap of trouble and maybe have a computer malfunction. So let me just close this down. Just give me one moment. Let me run a little promo while I take care of some technical stuff, and then we'll come back and continue with all of this. Here we go.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Sorry about that, folks. We are having some technical problems. I was afraid stuff like this was going to start happening. Everything just started acting up. I am back, though. Okay. Let's just get back into the story, and hopefully things will just smooth out. But if we get cut off and the broadcast ends, you'll know why. We're under attack by aliens. Okay, so where's that Daily Mail article? Well, you saw the article that I put up already. That was a Daily Mail article saying that on social media there were claims that there was a massive blackout in Paris that could impact the Paris Games. Now, I have not been aware. I'm not aware of any major disruptions as a result of any power blackouts. The reports that I've been seeing range from there's absolute chaos because of the blackout in Paris. I had people calling me, telling me that there was a major blackout because they'd seen reports of it online. Yet there are also reports like this one saying, and I'll show you right here, saying there is no power outage in Paris. Isn't that weird? And I've checked mainstream media sources, and they're in conflict as well. I'm seeing the whole range of reports from there are reports of, but not confirmed, to absolute chaos in Paris because of a power blackout. The result of all of this, and this is actually important, I don't even know. I don't know what the truth is. I'm certain it isn't chaos because the Olympics are ongoing. They had their news conference earlier today. Things are happening there. So there is power. So I know there's power. Was there a blackout on some scale? I'm not sure. That's how bad things are online. That's why when someone's telling me they know the absolute truth about something, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if any of us really know the truth anymore, because if you're not physically in a place, or if you're not sure that you're getting your information from a credible source, absolutely rock solid, credible, and firsthand information, someone that you can absolutely trust to tell you the truth, who has seen something with their own eyes, how do you know they're actually telling you the truth? How do you know? And that, not to say that they're lying, but they may have just read something, or they may have seen something online that was a lie or was just inaccurate, and they may just be repeating it. There's a lot of that going on. A lot of stories out there without what they call attribution. Now, just before we came on air, I started to think about attribution and the lessons I was taught while in journalism school about attribution, the importance of attribution. Attributing what you're saying in a story to someone, quoting people, naming your sources. It's about credibility. It's about honesty and truthfulness, accuracy. You know, and then I looked over, and what's been sitting beside this desk where I do this broadcast every night? It is this textbook, Writing News for Broadcast. I hadn't really been paying attention to it, but it's been sitting around here for years. For years. This is like the gold standard as far as I'm concerned when it comes to broadcast journalism. This was this textbook had a lot of influence on me as a journalist. And then I picked it up and I read the back, and it drove a message home for me. And I'm going to share it with you right here. Okay? So this was a textbook that I was using back in the 1980s. And when was it published? Let's just see here. When was this published? Where's the date? Publication date. Well, I don't know. I'm not finding a date here. I can only tell you that a lot of references. This is probably written in the late 70s, early 80s. And it refers to a new kind of reporting, which is, of course, what we're dealing with right now. And I'm just going to read this to you, okay? Because what was going on back then, copyright 1971, so originally published in 71, and then renewed in 1978. Dedicated to the memory of Edward R. Murrow. Forward by Fred Friendly. Names you may not know. It was put together by Edward Bliss Jr. at John M. Patterson. Anyway, on the back of the cover, it reads as such. It says, a crisis for the American press at a time of waning public confidence. If only they knew then where things were going, or where things would go years later, around 2019, 2020, at a time of waning public confidence in the press and frequent accusations that journalists have acted against the national interest. John Hohenberg believes that the danger of government regulation is growing. No kidding. This timely book, based on a thorough study of the proliferating threats to freedom of the press and on interviews with editors from New York to Clinton, Tennessee, is an absorbing and troubling account of the American press in a state of crisis. Now, this is back in 1971. Hohenberg is particularly disturbed by the indifference or hostility of much of, this is faded here, I'm so old. The hostility of much of the public to the concerns of the press, an attitude which seems to invite regulation and the compromising of First Amendment rights. He demonstrates that the press itself has done much to create this mistrust. No kidding. Even back then. Sound familiar? But argues forcefully that any move toward regulation by court rulings, antitrust suits, or laws to protect the national security, in quotation marks, might well emasculate the press and seriously threaten the functioning of American society. Isn't that interesting? All the way back in 1971. Those words could have been written today. That's about this textbook. Now, you know, I think it's important because we've gotten away from the basics of journalism, the most important ethical practices, best practices. You know, and we need, I think, you know, the solution to a lot of our problems is really to get back to basics, get back to the core principles of things in our institutions, in our government, in our journalism. And first chapter, I'll skip over the introduction, but I just want to read a paragraph or so from the very beginning of the textbook, chapter 1, a new kind of reporting. Oops, there we go. See? Because what's going on the internet is a new kind of reporting. When I was in school, television was still in its infancy. It wasn't a very old medium. Radio, also. Actually, not a really old medium, but the internet, oh my. That's like television on steroids. That's two-way communication. That's a whole new ball game, isn't it? And this, I have to say, I'm glad I studied this when I was younger, because it gave me the grounding. Not just this, but I'm glad I studied journalism when I did, because man, I learned from some really good people. I really did. Anyway, a new kind of reporting. And I these lessons need to be shared with journalists today, because so much of it is just being either forgotten or it was discarded. Most of it kind of went out the window in 2016. All because of Trump. Not because of him directly, but because of the way the media responded to him. And I think a lot of that was driven by his political opponents who were in government. Anyway, a new kind of reporting. In the beginning was the Word. And in radio, it was man's word, not God's, and the air was filled with screwball comedy, crooners' songs, and suds. Not every word was designed to sell or amuse. In 1920, a Pittsburgh station, KDKA, went on the air to report the returns in the presidential election in which Warren G. Harding defeated James M. Cox. Newscasts were heard for the first time. The voice of Lowell Thomas became as well known as the voice of the President of the United States. A king abdicated the throne of England on radio. And almost continuously for 18 days in 1938, H.V. Kaltenborn analyzed Chamberlain's nightmarish talks with Hitler for peace in our time. And when war did come, radio news came of age, and America listened. The role of radio in that time, the role of words heard simultaneously by millions, cannot be measured. Eric Savaride has observed, never, surely, in the history of human travail, had so many owed so much to so few human voices. Churchill speaking to the world, J.B. Priestley speaking to his own people, Ed Murrow speaking to America each night, the timbre of his powerful, steady voice reflecting the spirit of England and persuading millions of Americans that the cause was not lost, even when it seemed beyond saving. Raymond Swing speaking from America to the British via the BBC each week, letting them know in his intimate, friendly tones that America had got their message, that America understood. What were the words of these men? How did they write? Here is an excerpt from a Murrow script, vintage 1940. Christmas Day began in London nearly an hour ago. The church bells did not ring at midnight. When they ring again, it will be to announce invasion. And if they ring, the British are ready. Tonight, as on every other night, the rooftop watchers are peering out across the fantastic forest of London's chimney pots. The anti-aircraft gunners stand ready. And all along the coast of this island, the observers revolve in their reclining chairs, listening for the sound of German planes. The firefighters and the ambulance drivers are waiting too. The blackout stretches from Birmingham to Bethlehem. But tonight, over Britain, the skies are clear. This is writing news for broadcast. The sentences are readable, they are short, they are to the point. There is no fancy involved writing, no inverted pyramid with the answers to who, what, when, why, where, and how crammed into the first couple of sentences. The style is simple and straightforward. This is copy written to be read aloud, to be heard once, and with only that one hearing to be understood. Writing for a new medium. Writing so that people understand immediately with simple prose. The approach to reporting changes. The medium is the message. Insofar as the medium influences what you cover, how you cover it, or maybe what you make up. At least today. A lot of talk in here, too, about attribution. It seems a lot of that has gone straight out the window. I took note of another report that has come out from Seymour Hersh. And seems like it's another bombshell report with unnamed sources. An award-winning journalist who doesn't name his sources. How do you know if somebody actually has a source or if they just make stuff up? I don't know. Not that I want to be too critical of an award-winning journalist, but, you know, where I came from in the early days in particular, you were not allowed, period, to report on anything unless you had rock-solid attribution. No unnamed sources allowed. That was the rule for a long, long time. A lot of that has gone right out the window. Now what I'm seeing online really disturbs me. It angers me, frankly, at times, because I see outright fabrication. I was speaking with someone on the phone today about the attack by Hezbollah on Israel. Video has been recorded. It's been distributed. Some of it extremely graphic, so graphic that I can't show it to you here tonight. Well, I won't. I could, I suppose, but I choose not to because it is so graphic and it shows people actually dismembered. A soccer field struck with a rocket. And then the call that I was involved with, the conversation I had, I was told that, the person said, I'm seeing reports that say that where Hezbollah is saying that they didn't do it. And then there were other reports, I guess, that suggested Hezbollah is saying that, oh no, it was just fragments from a rocket that struck it. They didn't hit the field directly. But the video clearly shows otherwise. That's misinformation. That's wartime propaganda. Even peacetime propaganda when it's political in nature, such as that. I'm appalled by so much of what I see because there's just outright fabrication and lying that goes on all the time. Obviously, that rocket hit the soccer field and some people died, including kids. And when I think about 12 people. Now tonight, as a result of that, Israel is striking back against Hezbollah targets. And it looks like the war in the Middle East is escalating again. It's not looking good over there. I think because we get so far away from the truth as well, it just fuels things. It's easy to start a war. It's very, very difficult to end one. And it's very difficult to end a war when you don't have truth out there for the people. But it's also easier to start a war when you can lie to people. Journalism, real journalism, we need it now more than ever. We really, truly do, because people can't make good decisions. You don't know who to support. You don't know who the good guys are, the bad guys, if you don't have real information, if you don't have truth. And I'm sorry if I've made mistakes in the past. I do apologize. It is extremely difficult to sit here sometimes and determine whether something is real or whether it isn't. And that is honestly why I did not report on the blackout in Paris initially. I'm sort of glad that I didn't, because I still don't know sitting here tonight. And it's not even a difficult thing to determine. I just don't have the resources or the time to start making a bunch of independent phone calls all the way to Paris to talk to people to determine if there was really a blackout there. And if there was, how extensive it was and what kind of impact it might have had. I can tell you that there's no way that it was causing absolute chaos, so I know those reports are either exaggerations or outright fabrication. But this just illustrates how easy it is to completely screw up a narrative, or not even a narrative, but to just get people to a point where you don't know what's true anymore. A simple story, a power outage. And I don't even know if it's real or not. If it's that easy to confuse people, and I'm not the only one confused, if it's that easy to do it by simply publishing a report with counter information, saying the opposite, well, who do you believe? If it's that easy to do that for a story on that level, what about a war? Where I've seen artificial intelligence used to create images and even videos that I know are fake. Many other major stories as well. It really, really worries me, because if this is where we're going, we are in deep trouble. They can manipulate people with the internet to believe just about anything now. Another friend of mine called this week talking about Bitcoin. And I know that he was being presented with a scam. But the whole thing is so elaborate, so well done, that even as I'm explaining to him, not only that I think that it's a scam, but explaining to him how they did it, because I understand media, I think that he so wants to believe that it's a real opportunity that he might not really be listening to me, and he might, I don't know for sure, but I'm worried that he might actually send them money. Even though I've explained to him that it's not a real thing. I may do a story on it if you'll agree to come on and talk about it, but very, very concerning. Just on the news side, though, this is major, because they can manipulate our elections. They can manipulate people into supporting or not supporting a war effort. And when I was in school, television, with this textbook, television, new medium, a new kind of reporting. Chapter 1, a new kind of reporting. I was learning about this. I was absorbing this through my brain in the 1980s. Here we are, it's 2024, and we're dealing with the internet. It's about more than just writing style now, though, isn't it? It's about a lot more than that. It's about trying to determine what the heck is real. And yeah, this also affects the stories that we choose to cover here too, the medium itself. It's very complicated. And I know that, media literacy is not very high, generally speaking. It's higher today than it was in the 1980s in a way. Because when I was working in television, all the years that I worked in television, as a journalist, broadcast journalist, we would sometimes complete an interview with someone with a great big television camera, a camera operator, myself as like a reporter, sometimes with lights set up, audio equipment. And you know what some people would say to me at the end of the interview? They'd look at me and they would say, when is this going to be in the newspaper? That's a television camera, right? It's just, when's it going to be in the newspaper? That's the level of media literacy. People just, they don't understand how things work. They really don't understand. They go home and watch TV, but they still don't get it. Like they really don't. My parents, my mom kind of gets the internet. She's on the Facebook thing, but my dad, not so much. He doesn't even have a cell phone, doesn't want one. He's never had one. Totally get it. That's cool. If I call, he just picks up my mom's, she'll hand him the phone. I'm not even sure if he knows how to answer the darn thing. And he doesn't care. And he doesn't need it. I think he's a lot happier not having it. He's sure as heck a lot happier than I am. My dad. He sure is a lot happier than I am. He's not on the internet. He's just living his life in the real world, and there's no darkness there. Not for him. He just goes out and enjoys his life. Me? I'm here in the Matrix with you guys, and we're down these rabbit holes into the deepest, darkest places. And it's very clear to me that even though a lot of people spend all this time online, I'm not sure that media literacy is their strong point, because and rightly so, even because people are not equipped. We were not prepared for this as human beings, to be subjected to this kind of information overload. When the first moving pictures, film pictures came out, people didn't know what to make of it. They thought it was magical, maybe even satanic. And there are stories of, I don't remember what the film was just offhand, but there was a film of a train that was a picture of it coming straight at the camera. And the first people to see this freaked out because they thought that the train was going to come out of the screen and run them over. True story. You see, it depends on how well you understand, or if you even understand the technology, the medium at all. Today, of course, people would laugh about that, right? It's obvious it's not going to hurt you. But that's the way it was back then, because the people had never experienced it before. What are we immersed in right now? Worries me. I'm very scared, because I think a lot of people are being led astray. I know they are. I know they are. And old stories being regurgitated, recycled, reconstituted, redistributed, and re-embedded into people's minds. All of that going on as we seem destined to, in many ways, if not entirely, repeat the history of, I guess pick your war, World War I or World War II, which version. It looks like we're heading into a world war, doesn't it? And are we just being manipulated online? Is it even real? What are we seeing in Gaza? What are we seeing in Ukraine? How much of that can you trust? I'll tell you right now, some of the people that I was trusting, some of the people that I thought were giving us factual information, I'm not so sure anymore. So I'm being much more careful about everything that I accept as credible information that I pass on and share to you. Because I think a lot of these folks out there are clickbait artists. They are manipulated, sometimes even compromised by foreign governments. And I think the same can be true, can be said, and is true of some of our politicians. But there's another story that I think we're going to dig into in greater detail, honestly, on Tuesday night. I have a special guest lined up for Tuesday. You're not going to want to miss that. And it's not just the news media. It isn't just the internet. It's every aspect of our society, isn't it? It's our it's even our streets. People are freaking out. They're worried about 15-minute cities and digital surveillance. And I get it. I understand the concern. People are concerned about central bank digital currency. And what did we see this weekend? The Bitcoin conference. Huge. So huge that, of course, it was only appropriate to have Donald Trump there. And he did address the crowd, and he was looking for votes. And RFK Jr. was there as well, looking for votes. I would say buying votes with your tax dollars that he wants to convert into Bitcoin to create a strategic reserve. I've been thinking about it more, and the more I think about it, the more I realize how stupid it is. I think it's actually kind of stupid. I mean, it could pay off if Bitcoin continues to go up in value, but I think a strategic reserve of what for what? You want a strategic reserve of Bitcoin? Gold? Yes, I get it. Oil? Yeah, a strategic reserve of oil, but a strategic reserve of Bitcoin? That's problematic. That's the equivalent of saying you want a strategic reserve of, I don't know, US dollars. We're going to hold our dollars. RFK Jr. is standing up there talking about this. I would say that he's kind of like my dad. I don't think he understands the medium. The medium in this case being Bitcoin. Doesn't understand how it works. Doesn't understand what it really is. It doesn't even truly meet the definition of money, but it is being treated as kind of a currency. It just keeps going up and up and up in value, but that's because people are buying and holding and hoping that it goes up in value. And so you're getting increasing demand over time for the Bitcoin, but it's very volatile. It could go to zero. So for RFK Jr. to, it sounds like, I get what he's doing. To people who don't really understand how currency works, what currency is, how the economy works, how the money supply works. If people who don't really understand economics, it sounds like he's establishing a new Fort Knox, a digital Fort Knox, which sounds very modern and forward-thinking and innovative, but I would say it's very dangerous and even potentially destabilizing. So risky, I would say, is his plan that it could destroy the United States economy if this was actually to be implemented. It could just devastate the U.S. economy. It could undermine, it could destroy the U.S. dollar, especially if Bitcoin goes to zero. And if you get into an international crisis, what good is a strategic store of Bitcoin going to do you? Oil? Yeah, you can use your oil to power your industry, power your homes, your cars, your transportation network. It's a commodity. It actually has physical value. Bitcoin? What are you going to do with your Bitcoin when some other country starts firing missiles at you and they cut off your energy supply in the middle of a war? What are you going to do with your Bitcoin? You can't heat your house with it. And if you try and sell it all off as a country and flood the market with Bitcoin, you know what happens to the Bitcoin? Value crashes. Let's bring up RFK Jr. I'll just play his clip from the Bitcoin conference. I hate to do this. I kind of like RFK Jr. in a way, but the more I listen to him, the more I realize that his policies, these things that he comes up with, I'm just to the point where I think he's almost ready to say just about anything to get votes. And I don't think he thinks things through. I think he's just responding to these things on the fly as they're presented to him. And this was an opportunity for him to go in and buy votes with Bitcoin. Because you know what happens if he executes this plan to use tax dollars to buy up massive amounts of Bitcoin? The people who already hold Bitcoin will get more wealthy. That's because it will increase demand for Bitcoin on a grand scale. It rigs the system essentially by creating artificial demand by government buying up Bitcoin. And because there's increased demand on that scale, of course, the price goes up. It also signals to the market, to the general public, that there is confidence in Bitcoin coming from the federal government, which would suggest that the federal government might in itself be backing up Bitcoin, that Bitcoin is being used to back up or support the value of the US dollar. But I'd say that's foolhardy because Bitcoin is so volatile. It goes up and down like a yo-yo in terms of value. Over time, it has gone up, but this is a completely new medium. We're not sure where this is going. And if it starts to crash at some point, there is every possibility there could be what they would call a run on Bitcoin, and it could crash. It could go all the way to zero because it is not as established as, say, things like the stock market and gold. It's not even about being established. Gold also has physical value. You can use it for a variety of things. So it's always going to have value. But Bitcoin is just a bunch of zeros and ones, and its value is only supported by public confidence in it as a currency, that it has value because people believe it has value. But even the US dollar is backed up by more than just belief. It's backed up by the labor of the American people. It's backed up by the government itself, which is the people. And even though we're off the gold standard, it's still backed up and supported by being tied to the value of oil and defense, because the United States is employed with creating stability and security for Western countries as the leader, essentially, of NATO. Although all countries get an equal vote, the United States is clearly the leader of NATO, and that's why they have, in the US dollar, the world reserve currency by default. Anyway, here's RFK Jr. at the Bitcoin conference.
I will sign also an executive order directing the IRS to issue public guidelines that all transactions between Bitcoin and the US dollar are unreportable transactions. And by extension, non-taxable. I will sign also an executive order directing the IRS to issue public guidelines that all transactions between Bitcoin and the US dollar are unreportable transactions.
Okay, so there's that. Now let me see here. Does he have the other clip here? Okay, a lot of people cheering this. You know, you can disagree with me if you want. Many people will. It's not that I'm against Bitcoin. I have a little bit of Bitcoin. I bought Bitcoin because I wanted to understand how it works. I didn't want to get left behind, but I have like a little bit. I don't have a lot. I just have a little bit of Bitcoin, and I do understand how it works. I've learned what it is. I learned how to acquire it, how to trade it. And let me see here let's see if we got that. Here we go. Yeah, here's the clip of RFK Jr. saying that he wants to build a strategic reserve of Bitcoin. Sounds grand, but I think that it might be destabilizing.
I will sign another executive order directing the U.S. Treasury to purchase 550 Bitcoin daily until the U.S. has built a reserve of at least 4 million Bitcoins. and a position of dominance that no other country will be able to usurp. Our nation holds approximately 19% of global gold reserves. This policy will give us about the same proportion of total Bitcoin. The cascading impact from these actions will eventually move Bitcoin to a valuation of hundreds of trillions of dollars.
So it could happen, and there could be a windfall for America if that ends up being the case, if it does go up in value, but it could go to zero. It's, I don't know, I think that it needs more study. And I could be persuaded to change my mind on this because it is a new medium of exchange. So I could totally be convinced the other way. But right now, it just seems to me that it needs a lot more study before the U.S. government starts taking your tax dollars to buy Bitcoin on a large scale to build a strategic reserve of something that is nothing more than a bunch of zeros and ones in a computer or on a digital wallet. I don't know. Some people would say it's innovative thinking. I would say risky and maybe not fully thought through. Let me take a break. We'll come back, and our coverage of today's top news stories will continue.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
All right, I'm back, and ABC News has an exclusive report tonight and an exclusive interview that they conducted with the local SWAT team at the Trump rally where we saw him shot by a would-be assassin. Now, what they're reporting is huge. It's a bombshell report. It really is. And we got a teaser today. We'll get a full interview presented tomorrow night, I believe, on ABC National. I'll bring up their article accompanying this today. Failure of communication. Local SWAT team details account of Trump rally assassination attempt. And what they're saying is that the local SWAT team from the local police service had no communication, zero, with the Secret Service that day. A complete breakdown in planning, no communication between the local team, the local SWAT team, and Secret Service members. They were supposed to meet with Secret Service snipers, apparently, before Trump took to the stage, but that never happened. They had no way to communicate with the SWAT team. It was again just another example of a complete communications breakdown, because not even a breakdown, it was never set up. We have a portion of that interview presented as a teaser here. So we'll share that with you. And I'm going to be watching, or I don't know if I'll be able to watch while I'm on here tomorrow night, but we'll try to bring you whatever other information comes out of this, because these are the people, the local people who were charged with keeping Trump safe. These are the local police officers. And looks like the federal guys, the Secret Service, didn't properly bring them into the circle to coordinate with them, and that's why we got the confusion and I think the delay in dealing with this suspicious character on the roof, who ended up being a gunman. Here's the clip from today.
We were supposed to get a face-to-face briefing with the Secret Service snipers whenever they arrived, and that never happened. So I think that was probably a pivotal point where I started thinking things were wrong, because that never happened, and we had no communication with the Secret Service.
You had no communication with the Secret Service at all on that Saturday?
Not until after the shooting.
And by then?
It was too late.
Wow. Like, wow. So more will come out of that tomorrow, and we'll be following that. That's a big story for ABC. That's a big story for America. Okay, what else do I have for you tonight? You know, Trump, too, on that Bitcoin thing. I mean, he was there playing to the Bitcoin crowd, says he wants America to be #1 in Bitcoin. I don't know where that goes. He didn't go as far as RFK Jr., though, from what I saw. But they're playing to that audience. The Bitcoin community has become a voting bloc in itself. And of course, they want the government to adopt it, embrace it, invest in it with your tax dollars to increase demand, to increase the price. It increases the value of the Bitcoin that these Bitcoiners, including myself, are already holding. It makes people with Bitcoin even wealthier. And Trump says he's going to get the government off people's backs too. Reduce regulations and stop the war on Bitcoin, as he put it. And there has been sort of a war on Bitcoin because the government has been very afraid of it. They want the tax money. They honestly do. That's why I don't know where it goes with RFK Jr.'s plan too, to not only make it illegal with an executive order, mind you, but make it illegal to track transactions, Bitcoin transactions, through the internet or through that part of the metaverse. But it also makes it tax-free. Well, if you start buying up Bitcoin in massive amounts like that, it creates an incentive for people to convert US dollars into Bitcoin. That will reduce the value of US dollars. And in the long run, I just find it all potentially destabilizing. Needs a lot more study. J.D. Vance. Let's move on to J.D. Vance. He he really took Kamala Harris to task here. She recently questioned his loyalty to America, and J.D. Vance came out a swinging in response. Pretty powerful speech he gave here. This speech coming on the heels of criticism, not only from Trump's, Democrat, how should I put this? The Trump-Vance opponents on the Democrat side, but also some critics even from within Republican circles. He has some work to do to convince people that he was the right pick for Donald Trump. There's still some skeptics out there, quite a few of them. People are looking for reassurance. And maybe a performance like this is what it will take to win the people who are not sure over.
I saw the other day Kamala Harris question my loyalty to this country. That's the word she used, loyalty. And it's an interesting word, simplify. loyalty, because there is no greater sign of disloyalty to this country than what Kamala Harris has done at our southern border. And I'd like to ask the Vice President, what has she done to question my loyalty to this country? I served in the United States Marine Corps. I went to Iraq for this country. I built a business for this country. And my running mate took a bullet for this country. So my question to Kamala Harris is, what the hell have you done to question our loyalty to the United States of America? And the answer, my friends, is nothing. So let's send a message to the media. Let's send a message to Kamala Harris. Let's send a message to every hardworking patriot from Minnesota across the country. We are ready to have President Donald J. Trump back, and we're going to work our tails off to make sure it happens. God bless you all. Thank you. And thank you for having me, Minnesota, a great state.
Yeah, Trump was covering a lot of ground there with J.D. Vance, too. You know, I think he stopped, I think there were 3 stops yesterday, 3 rallies. Again, setting quite a pace. One heck of a pace. What else is going on? Oh, yes, I'll just get into this a little bit. Landmark Supreme Court decision on Indigenous rights. Lawyers and First Nations leaders held a news conference after this Supreme Court decision in Canada. This is something we probably should have mentioned a couple of days ago, but we're getting to it now, just to make you aware. And the top court has ruled that the court breached revenue sharing promises that were included in the 1850 treaties with some First Nations groups in the Upper Great Lakes in that area. And the Crown must negotiate an increase to resource revenues it owes them. This is about huge money. I think we're talking about $1 billion, if I'm not mistaken. I'll try to confirm that before we wrap up this segment, this information. Now, let me bring up this. Here we go. Okay. Let's go to the clip. We'll let the lawyers do some of the talking here. They're usually pretty good with words and should be able to explain.
My name's Harley Schachter. I am legal counsel for White Sand and Red Rock First Nation. Red Rock and White Sand First Nation 25 years ago brought this case that is 175 years in the making. It was a long time coming. Today, the Supreme Court of Canada has agreed that there's been an unjust and unfair process by Canada and Ontario. They have not honored the treaty obligation. Indeed, 25 years ago, when White Sand and Red Rock took on this case, the government said there was no obligations. There was no treaty right to an increased annuity. There was no right to share the wealth of the treaty territory that was part of the traditional territory of the First Nations. Today, that is over. Today, the Supreme Court of Canada has ruled that there is a treaty obligation to share in the wealth of the treaty territory by way of increased annuities from time to time. Today, the Supreme Court of Canada has answered that treaty rights are constitutional rights. Today, the Supreme Court of Canada has made sure and expressly stated that the governments are not above the law. They do not have unfettered discretion to decide if there should be an annuity increase, when it should be, That matter ultimately is for the courts to decide if the governments do not act honorably in accordance with principles of respect, responsibility, reciprocity, and renewal, all Anishinaabeg principles of law that govern the treaty relationship and will in the future continue to govern the treaty relationship. The government, the Crown, says the Supreme Court of Canada today, has 6 months from the release of this decision today, 6 months, to sit down with us to negotiate an honorable resolution of the past grievances about what the past, the compensation for the past. If they do not, then they must pay what they believe is owed, and the matter would go to court. And Justice Hennessy would be called upon at that point to provide guidance on what an appropriate remedy would be. But the clock is ticking, and we are looking forward to negotiations with the Crown, and we are hopeful for a positive resolution. I can say that today's decision is a victory for democracy as well as for our clients. It's a victory for our clients because for 175 years, the governments, like a fox in charge of a chicken coop, claimed that they alone had unfettered discretion to decide on whether there was any wealth to be shared. Meanwhile, when the First Nations asked the court for help, the governments argued that the courts have no role to play. The fox, if you will, insisted that they alone were in charge. Well, today that fairy tale ends. Today, the Supreme Court of Canada made clear that the fox is not in charge of the chicken coop, and the treaty annuity promise must be fulfilled in accordance with the honor of the Crown. If I can put it another way, and perhaps mixing metaphors, after 175 years of abject and dishonorable neglect on the part of the Crown and refusing to honor their treaty obligations, the government's chickens have now come home to roost. Now, if Ontario and Canada do not come to the table, the Supreme Court of Canada has given us a remedy and a path forward, and we're very, very grateful to the Supreme Court of Canada and look forward to prosperity for my clients and an opportunity for them to share in the economic benefits of our great country. Thank you.
Can I just ask a quick fact question?
Yes.
In terms of beneficiaries, the judgment talked about 2017, roughly 13,500 individual beneficiaries as part of the Superior Anishinaabe group. Red Rock and White Sand are two First Nations that are on the judgment, but I'm assuming there's more First Nations communities.
It is all the Robinson Superior Treaty beneficiaries that benefit, and the court was clear in saying that it's a collective entitlement for the First Nations benefit.
Do you know roughly the number of communities that are party to this?
There could be as much as 12 First Nations that are involved with a population of approximately 15,000.
How much money were you seeking for this? And I mean compensation, obviously.
The amount of compensation, we've actually had a phase 3 discussion about that, and it ranges from anywhere from a couple billion says Canada to as much as 126 billion, but the range for the plaintiffs is a reasonable range between those amounts. And it would be preferable, says the court, for the parties to decide what that amount is, whether it's 10 billion, 20 billion, 80 billion. It would be reasonable, sorry, it would be preferable, says the Supreme Court of Canada, for the parties to reach that rather than the courts. But if there cannot be an agreement among the parties, the court ultimately retains the power and authority to remedy that by awarding an amount, or the court could say, you know, we're going to ask you to reconsider it. We don't think that that number is correct. Ontario, Canada, go back to the table.
But you're unsettled for 10 billion. Do your clients believe they are owed more than that?
My clients believe that my clients are owed more than 10 billion, and maybe the Hurons are owed more than 10 billion as well. I would not want to exclude that as well.
What's your message to the governments of Canada and Ontario going into these negotiations, given that you now have the court to fall back on if you don't reach an agreement?
Well, my message to Canada and Ontario is come to the table with an open heart and in the spirit of reciprocity, reconciliation, should lead the way and lead a path to an honorable resolution of somewhere between the amounts that I've mentioned, which is consistent with the evidence in stage 3. We had a lot of economic experts telling us what wealth there was to share.
The only thing I'll add to that is the court today found that the Crown has severely undermined the spirit and substance of the treaty. And so going into these negotiations are an opportunity for the Crown to remedy that, to work towards enhancing and reconciliation in the honor of the Crown, but also the spirit and the substance of the treaty.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Hello. My name's Spencer Bass. I'm counsel for Big Tugong Nishnabeg First Nation. Firstly, I want to say that aujourd'hui, ce jugement-là est une victoire historique pour les personnes Anishinaabe de la Nord d'Ontario.
This is huge, huge money. This is landmark.
Today, the highest court in this country has recognized what our clients have been saying for decades. The $4 per person that the government has been paying under the Robinson Superior Treaty is shocking, and it makes a mockery of the treaty promise. Those are not my words. Those are the words of a unanimous Supreme Court of Canada. The court was also unanimous in declaring that the Crown has breached the treaty. They wholeheartedly rejected Ontario's attempts to throw out this case on technical arguments around the statute of limitations, and compensation must now be paid. The court has given the Crown a roadmap to change their conduct, to pay our clients what they are owed. And if they do not, if they continue and they persist in their dishonorable conduct that has lasted for more than 150 years, then we will do what the court said we can do, and we will return to the court and force them to act honorably. I would now turn it over to members of White Sand and Red Rock who wanted to say something.
Bonjour. Go discuss among them up downs in Calais. I'm really happy about the decision that came today. Our legal team mentioned 25 years. This started all from 50 years ago when our former chief at White Sand started this process. Chief Doug Sinaway and I used to talk about the treaty money that we used to get, which is $4, and he figured at that time wasn't worded, and I'm glad that today came where I can tell Chief Doug Sinaway that we have a decision, but we still have work to do because.
What a great day. I want to say thank you to Harley and Caleb for all their tireless hours working for us. I'm newly elected. I'm like 3 months in, but I was at the meeting when they first gave the go-ahead to fight this course along with White Sands. And I'm standing here proud to finally see something going our way. Thank you.
Do you think we could get you to tell us your name? Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Just in front of the...
Chief Alan Odawa Jr. From Red Rock Indian Band.
What's the name again?
Chief Alan Odawa Jr.
Okay. And the other gentleman?
Sorry, I started off in the Ojibwe language saying that my name is Owl's Foot from the Lone Clan from White Sand. I'm the chief of White Sand currently. First Nation, my given name is Lawrence Wennickmit, Chief of White Sand. Miigwech.
Are there any more questions?
Incredible.
To tell us, just can you speak to the precedent that this sets for other First Nations in Canada who are, in dispute with the federal government, with the Crown, over treaties?
Well, the first thing is that the decision is long and complicated, and it'll take a little bit more time to digest. But some general thoughts are reconciliation among First Nations is a key component of the future relationship between the government and First Nations. Sharing, respect, responsibility, renewal, reciprocity, these are Anishinaabeg principles that animate that relationship. And it's a sacred relationship about sharing among nations. And as we move forward as a country, this is a signal to us as Canadians, really, to work together for the betterment of all Canadians. What is good for Anishinaabeg people is good for Canada. So it's a victory for everybody.
Some really strong language in this ruling, including that Canada, or the Crown, made a mockery of treaty rights. Was any of that surprising to you?
No. In a word, no. It wasn't surprising that there was harsh words and condemnation. It has been 175 years of abject neglect and complete refusal to abide by a promise, which was effectively to share the wealth of the treaty territory in that simple terms. And in that simple terms, the court does say that this is a treaty about sharing and sharing of the wealth to the betterment of both.
Can you just weigh in a bit on what the ruling says about the fiduciary duty and the honor aspect and the differences there?
All right. On the issue of fiduciary duty, the court did say that the fiduciary duty, the relationship exists, but that the honor of the Crown fills the role, this is my interpretation, that the honor of the Crown fills the role that fiduciary duty used to take. They, in black letter law terms, they said the fiduciary duty does not apply in this case because there isn't what's called a cognizable Aboriginal interest. It's kind of legal technicalities, but it doesn't apply. But from our perspective, it doesn't need to apply if the honor of the Crown is as robust as the Supreme Court of Canada has ruled it to be.
Does that represent a shift by the Supreme Court in terms of its interpretation of the honor of the Crown?
I don't believe it's a shift. I believe it's along the continuum of where the law on the honor of the Crown is developing. It is developing with an eye on reconciliation as opposed to the law of fiduciaries. So the role for the honor of the Crown is expanding, I will say that. And it's interesting, perhaps a historical factoid, that the principle of the honor of the Crown was first coined or first discussed, not in Mikisew Cree in 2004 or 2005, excuse me, but in the Supreme Court of Canada in 1875, in this very dispute in the annuities case. That's where the Supreme Court of Canada in Mikisew picked up the idea that the honor of the Crown has a role to play in Aboriginal and treaty rights litigation. So it's kind of full circle, and we're moving forward, I hope, to a better Canada for sure.
Thank you so much.
Yes. More questions? No?
All right, folks. That is a game changer. Precedent setting, because it is a Supreme Court of Canada ruling. I will return. Don't go away.
He's a fighter. He He's a survivor. President Trump, defiant, strong. He is determined to make America great again. Pay tribute to the 45th President of the United States with this collectible t-shirt from the Maverick News Memorable Moments collection. Even a would-be assassin's bullet could not stop him. Instead, he emerged with his fist in the air ready to fight for freedom. Get your Trump Fighting for Freedom t-shirt with any donation of $30 or more to Maverick News. There are 2 iconic artistic designs to choose from, but there is only one way to get these. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Support free speech, free media. Support Maverick News. Call 1-866-248-1490 or order online at supergeeks.tv.
Okay, so the polls are beginning to close in Venezuela. In what is their most consequential election in at least the past 2 decades, 25 years or so. President Nicolas Maduro is confident of victory, but he has some opposition from Maria Corina Machado, who has been the star of a coalition campaign. Despite a ban on her holding public office, which forced her to pass the torch to candidate Edmundo Gonzalez, who is a 74-year-old ex-diplomat. Gonzalez won the backing, even from some former supporters of the ruling party. So he is a political force, but not quite clear where all this is going to go. Maduro, whose 2018 re-election is, at least by the United States, considered to be fraudulent, says Venezuela has the world's most transparent electoral system, and he's warning of a bloodbath if he loses. We've seen some unrest in the streets. So it looks like some of the polls might have even closed early. I'm not sure if that is constitutional in Venezuela or proper, or if it's even proper in any election, but it looks like some of that was going on, and that was causing some chaos at some of those polling stations today. So we have our eye on that, and we will have more on that tomorrow. Of greater concern, though, in particular to the Friday night beer and wings crowd, we have learned that Hooters is closing as many as 12 locations. It's a response to inflation, changing market conditions, apparently. And I had a couple of notes up here about it. Where'd we go? I lost my notes on the Hooters story. I know everybody wants to see the Hooters story. Come on, I'm sorry, folks. I am sorry. Here we go. Okay. Yeah. But a dozen locations shutting down. And it's just part of actually some big changes in the fast food and chain restaurant industry. They're under a lot of pressure, as I say, because of inflation, changing market conditions. They have some underperforming stores, so they have issued a statement saying they're going to close about a dozen locations, and since 2018. Hooters has seen a 12% decline in the number of its restaurants. They had 333 at the end of 2018 and only 209 by 2023. So this is part of an ongoing evolution of Hooters, but it's not going, not quite going the way I think that the restaurant chain would like. Hooters in decline. Now, I had something queued up related to that. Where did it go? Man, too many tabs open, and we're getting near the end of our story list here. Let me see if I can find this for you. Only appropriate that we end off. Here we go. This is what I wanted. This is a message from Emily. I just thought maybe since we opened with a satanic, sinful Last Supper, we'd end with something to whet your appetite, so to speak. Even though it's not Friday night. This is Sunday. So this could be, this. If you're watching the repeat broadcast, we're live here Sunday night. And I just thought, well, you know, why not work up an appetite before we sign off tonight? So here's Emily Hooters. I believe she's at a Florida location. So if you're in Florida, I'm not sure what city, stop by on Fridays and say hello to Emily. Yay, it's Friday. There you go. And enough of that. I don't know what else to tell you. Okay. Enough. I'm too old for that. And yeah, I don't even like Hooters. Have you ever eaten at a Hooters? I don't like their wings. They are heart attack in a basket. That's what. Sorry, it's true. Don't do it. You'll need a defibrillator immediately. Oh, talk about grease. We will be back tomorrow night, folks. 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, everybody, for joining me here on the program. Again, please like, share, subscribe. If you haven't hit that thumbs up, please consider doing so over on YouTube especially, and over on Rumble. Please like, share, subscribe, get it all out there. Give us the big thumbs up. We need all those thumbs up to force Google to push us up in the search engine rankings against the mainstream media. So really appreciate that support. Appreciate all of those to all of you who have donated. Can't do it without you, and we need you now more than ever. And we'll be back tomorrow on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.